and welcome to another edition of Time Drive with Pete Chambers. That's probably me in the ghost town car, which is probably this in the Coventry Music Museum. Each episode we go back in time, and this time we're looking at 1980. Yeah, quite an exciting year for Coventry and Two-Tone and everything else that came along in that year. And we've got a very special guest coming in later on, and I'll be asking him what makes him tick, and that's of course Roddy Radiation Byers. Well, let's get on with the show. So 1980 was a great year for Coventry music, of course. Two-Tone. It was all over the country, all over the world. People wanted a piece of Coventry. But not just the Coventry bands like the Specials and the Selector. We had the Beat from Birmingham and we had Madness from London. It was all going on, and I remember people were coming to Coventry to get that Coventry sound, bands recording at Horizon Studios because they wanted to sound like the Specials and the Selector. Not sure if they ever did, but hey, they tried. So 1980, what was going on in the world in that year? Well, the Rubik Cube, yeah, that made its international debut. How many people took the stickers off on the side and put them on and pretended they could do it? Yeah, I know you did. Yeah, me as well. US President Jimmy Carter announced that the United States would boycott the 1980 Summer Olympics in Moscow because of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. The Empire Strikes Back was released in the United States, and this one, being a Beatles fan, music legend and former Beatle John Lennon is murdered in New York, and I still remember that like it was yesterday. I always remember going home from work and I sat there with my food on my tray watching it on the telly, and I just cried. Not something I did very often, and I remember my dad looking at me and saying, why are you crying for a man you never knew? And he never got it. You know, I did know this man. You know, I grew up with this man. He was the soundtrack of my life, and although I never met him, although I have met Yoko since, although I never met John Lennon, it meant so much. It was such an impact on me, and sadly my dad never really got it, but that's how strong it is for me and a lot of other people. Right, welcome Roddy.
Hello.
To Time Drive and of course the Ghost Town car.
Yeah.
Before we go any further, tell us about the Ghost Town car. Do you remember that day?
Yeah, I do, yeah. We started about 10 o'clock in the evening and finished about 6:30 the next day.
And how was it?
Grueling.
I know most of the Specials never like making videos.
Well, Jerry took over the production of it. He told the director, he said, you either do it my way or we don't do it at all, you know.
So you did it Jerry's way?
Yeah.
But it did come out pretty good?
Yeah, it was great, yeah. But saying it, there wasn't a lot of fun to make, but videos never normally are, you know. Unless you're Duran Duran and you sort of like in the Bahamas or someplace with like girls in bikinis. Yeah.
So going right back in time, so what music made you want to pick up the guitar?
Well, I used to be a big fan of the Monkees when I was about 12. You know, I used to watch the programme religiously every week, you know. And
what was it that sort of inspired you?
Well, it just looked like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they lived in a beach house together, and it looked like a lot of fun being in a band, you know. Little did I know.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So early influences, tell us about those.
Well, I went from the Monkees to Jimi Hendrix, which is a bit of a leap, you know. But and then all the heavy rock stuff, and then I got into all the glam rock stuff like Bowie and Roxy Music and T-Rex, you know.
Did you see all these at the Lounge?
I saw Bowie at the Coventry Theatre.
Yeah, I was there,
I missed T-Rex at the Lounge, worse luck. I don't know why I missed that one.
What about Roxy Music?
I saw Roxy Music at the Lounge as well. I was right down the front. That was great.
Absolutely. So moving on a little bit, what about the Wild Boys? Tell us about that band, because it's quite influential in Coventry.
I was in a working men's club cover band kind of thing, and we used to do occasional gigs as the Wild Boys, and that became like a glam rock and roll kind of band. And then when the punk thing came along, we adapted to that, you know.
So, I mean, obviously a lot of people in Coventry still talk very well about that band.
Well, my brother took over the name of the band when I joined the Specials, or the Coventry Automatics. So he carried on with the name, and they did quite well locally.
Right, the next question, I know you've answered this many times, but when you first joined the Coventry Automatics, you were at the Domino. And tell us that little story, because I always think it's entertaining.
Well, the Domino was like a late night drinking dive, you know, which was usually full. Well, it was a gay haunt at one time, and then it kind of got took over by criminal type people, and people just wanted a late drink, you know. And me and Jerry at the time both liked a late drink, so if it wasn't a student party going on, you could crash. You'd go to the Domino, you know, and he'd let you in the back door. You know, that was okay, you know. But Jerry Dammers mentioned he was doing some recording in London the next day, and would I play some lead guitar on the recording? And I said, yeah, great, smashing, you know. Next morning I forgot all about it, you know, and I heard someone kicking and banging my front door, and it was Jerry Dammers and Pete Waterman.
What you do?
So I told my wife, I'm going to London and do some recording. You know, you what? You know, I'll see you soon. You know, like, I put my AC30 Vox in a taxi and my Gibson Les Paul, and we drove to the station, and went to Euston, then got a taxi to Soho and did some demos, you know, which never saw the light. Well, didn't see the light of day until years and years later.
Yeah. That was called Berwick Street Studios, which is still there. I managed to get in a few years ago. They've completely changed, but nice to get in there. But how did you feel, and again moving on a little bit, because we've only got so much time, but how did you feel when you first had a hit with Gangsters?
Well, it was kind of like a dream come true, because we'd done the Clash tour supporting, and suffered a little bit on that, and then we spent a year sort of just rehearsing. The drummer quit, and Jerry wanted to play more ska-based music instead of the punky reggae we were doing before, and we borrowed the money off a local businessman and recorded Gangsters, but we spent all the money on the one A side. So Jerry knew Neil Davis had done a kind of a ska reggae instrumental, and that became the B side, because we couldn't afford to do another track.
And the rest is history.
Yeah, and then they got Rough Trade because in them days you could press up, you know, like singles or whatever and EPs, and you know, just get so many done and sell them at gigs or at Rough Trade shops, you know, the independent shops. And John Peel liked it, and he played it a lot, and gradually we started doing shows in London, and it took off. You know, we were kind of lucky because there was the mod revival at the time, and we still kind of fitted into the punk mode a bit, you know. So a lot of other bands started coming to see us and saying they liked us, and then the press got interested, and then the record companies came, you know.
Yeah, and everybody wanted a piece of you guys.
Yeah, it wasn't overnight by any means, but once it started working, it did go rather quick, you know.
Right, well, you just mentioned mods there, so there's a slight connection to the next question, which I think it's time we played another video. So, your favourite single?
Waterloo's Sunset, the Kinks.
And why did you pick this particular one?
I was a big Kinks fan. I was into a lot of early pop music, and I loved the Kinks more than the Beatles. Kinks, Rolling Stones.
Controversial there.
Yeah.
Well, a great band, absolutely.
They were the bad boys. That's probably why I liked them. You know, the Kinks were kind of naughty, and the Rolling Stones were supposed to be bad, you know, as people.
Yeah.
Well, I think that was all basically just the way they were sold, you know. I think the Beatles were probably just as bad when they were in Hamburg.
I think you're right.
Before that, you know, when they were all rockers, you know.
Right, so welcome back. We're talking to Roddy Radiation Boys. Do you still like to be called Roddy Radiation?
I did try to drop the name in the very early 80s, but the manager we had, who was Rick Rogers, who was the specials manager, he was looking after me and my band, the Tearjerkers. And he said I had to use the name because people knew that name, and you know, and it was a nickname I got from my middle brother Chris. When I was into Ziggy Stardust, he for a joke, he called me Roddy Radiation. So when the punk thing happened, and everyone had these strange monikers, I used that name as a stage name, you know, and I can't get rid of it now.
Why would you? Because people know you for that.
Yeah.
Quite right, you know.
Well, it's kind of funny because I'd be doing like these anti-nuclear gigs and that, and there's like Roddy Radiation, you know, like which. But there's good and bad forms of radiation, so hopefully I'm a good form.
Yeah,
you know?
Definitely, yeah.
I heal people.
Yeah. So were you happy with the original special sound? Obviously you're, you know, always down as being the man that created the punk energy with the
Well, that was Jerry asking me to join the band. He wanted that kind of punk rock and roll guitar, which wasn't the obvious choice for a ska band, you know. So like, in the early days, we'd kind of mixed it all up, you know, and it seemed to work, you know, because like rock and roll and early ska are pretty close, you know,
yeah.
like R&B and that, you know, because Fats Domino was huge in Jamaica, and they used to pick up a lot of stuff off the southern states on the radio in Jamaica, I was told.
Yeah, to get, and of course the sound developed, but I actually remember listening to the Specials' first album, and I just listened to your guitar playing. There's some really inventive stuff going on there.
I mean, played what I could, you know.
Yeah, I mean, was that down to you, or was that Jerry telling you to play?
I just played sort of like Johnny Thunders, Chuck Berry, a bit of Dwayne Eddy thrown in, and whatever I knew, you know, whatever I could fit in with Linval's ska guitar, you know.
Well, it worked brilliantly.
It was cool actually. Like I got reviewed in the very early days. I think it was Charles Shaw Murray, and he said the incongruous guitar playing of Roddy Radiation. So I looked it up in the dictionary, and it said incongruous apparently means like doesn't quite fit, you know.
Yeah, which is.
But that became a whole style of its own, like the ska punk thing, especially in the States where they took that on board completely.
Well, I think it worked absolutely brilliantly, but each their own, and of course, you know, it's a classic album now, and you know, so much.
Well, I say whatever could be wrong when it first comes out becomes like a style of its own, you know.
Absolutely.
There's nothing really completely new. It's just a matter of putting things together which haven't been done before, you know.
Yeah, which of course you've done with your Ska-Billy style.
Yeah, well that was it. Yeah. Well, you know, like I said, the early rock and roll and ska are pretty close, you know.
Yeah. So, Rat Race, an amazing song. Is that your proudest moment in the Specials?
Yeah, it took me a while to get the band to play it. I don't know whether it's because of the subject matter or what. I think probably the three ex-college guys thought I was having a dig at them, but it wasn't about that at all. It was about rich students sort of wasting their time when their places at college and university could have gone to people that deserved it more, you know.
Yeah, which absolutely. I think people get that now, but of course at the time, I think it was sort of considered a little bit of a negative dig at students, but it's not.
Anti-education, someone said.
Oh, blimey, yeah, it's a bit heavy. But the Specials' second album, More Specials, was a huge move away from the first one. You know, were you happy with that?
Not particularly, no. Well, it was. I reckon it was based on John Shipley, who later played the Special AKA, because Jerry was hanging out with John, and John was into Muzak and John Barry and Montavani and all that kind of stuff, you know. So like Jerry had kind of picked up on that, decided that was the direction the band should go in, and I was going more rockabilly, I guess. So it wasn't really the way I wanted to go, you know.
Yeah. But of course you had was it Holiday Fortnight?
Yeah, well that was. Well, I thought if we're going to do that, I'll write something in that kind of vein, you know, like. And that was a song called Why Argue with Fate, which Jerry. I put the words up on the studio wall, and Jerry decided the lyrics were about him, so he changed it to instrumental and changed the title to Holiday Fortnight.
Great tunes.
Yeah, I'll have to do it again, like with the lyrics. I did do a version on my website.
So, we'll come up to favourite album now. So tell us a bit about that. What's your favourite all-time album?
There's several, that's the problem, but I think, you know, Electric Warrior T-Rex is one of my favourites. It kind of, it reminds, I think, when you're younger, you tend to like, well, it's the stuff that, when you were happy, well, when things seemed easier, and like, you know, I seemed to be having a lot of fun, and it reminds me of those days, you know.
Yeah, and is there any particular track?
Jeepster, maybe.
Right, welcome back. Still talking to Roddy here, and I'm going to ask you about Ghost Town, making of that single. Of course, an iconic single. We all love it, we all know it, but apparently it wasn't that easy to actually make and record in the studio.
Well, by that time, instead of like the first album was a bit more where we all contributed, but by the Ghost Town and by the second album, Jerry decided he wanted us all to do exactly as we told him, you know, as he told us. So, you know, he was literally sort of telling us note for note what to play. And I wanted to contribute more, you know, and I wasn't too happy, you know.
But it seemed to be like that. I mean, it wasn't just...
Well, and when we first heard his idea for Ghost Town, it did seem a bit doom-laden and a bit laid back, you know, like I was thinking, is this going to work, you know? But it did, so...
Absolutely. How did it feel when, I mean, we're moving on a little bit here, but when the demise of the Specials, and you'd already began your band, the Tearjerkers, but how did that, was it a sense of freedom when you realised that perhaps you were never going back to the Specials?
I was doing what I wanted to do, and with my mates, and we were playing around the country, and I was still thinking, like, you could, say 5 years or 10 years before, you could actually sort of still get successful by just playing around and getting noticed, but things had moved on a lot by then, you know, and all the new romantic thing was in, so unless you had a flash video, and there was me playing, gone back in time, playing like early rootsy rock and roll, you know.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a struggle, but I had a lot of fun for a while.
But your band at the moment, the Scarbilly Rebels, anything new on the horizon with those guys? Because you're always working, you're playing everywhere.
Yeah, well, I've done Argentina and did Hong Kong recently. That was more guesting, you know. We're off to Ireland next year with the Scarbilly Rebels, and we did Hamburg a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, it's, you know, it's getting good. And
do you prefer to be on stage with your band rather than the Specials?
Well,
or is that a difficult question to
no,
answer?
it's kind of like, it's nice being the boss, I suppose, in a musical way, you know.
Of course. And you call the shots, and you have
well, that's it. Like I would say, Jerry telling me that song's not good enough for the Specials, or I don't think you're playing that the way it should be. It's like Concrete Jungle. Jerry wanted to change the title to Asphalt Jungle because Bob Marley had a song called Concrete Jungle.
Yeah. But also Ghost Town as well was a song, wasn't it? So,
well, I think with most titles of songs or band names even, like, if you think of a good one, it's been used before.
Right, well, coming up to the last question here, and I'm going to ask you this. I think I know what the answer is going to be, but would you ever join the Specials again, even for a one-off gig?
No.
Right, Roddy.
It's always ended in. It's always started off with great hopes and enthusiasm, and it's always ended in tears. The 3 times I've been involved, you know, the middle 90s period, which doesn't get much of a mention, and the early days, obviously, and more recently, it wasn't happy, you know, for me anyway.
Right, well, Roddy, thank you so much for being so honest, and thank you for coming along.
Well, I hope I had a filling done earlier on today, so I'm a bit numb in the mouth. So
no, it's all brilliant.
I'm trying to speak without slobbering down my chin.
Right.
Right, here's a hard question for you people out there. Which song did I write on this album?